Right now, almost 1 in 3 car buyers want to buy completely online, and if your dealership can't close that deal, someone else will. Accelerate My Deal Elite gives you real online checkout, ID and insurance verification, and dealer control without changing the way you work. Visit dealdoers.com to learn more.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Wednesday, March 4th, 2026. I'm Jake Neer in Detroit, in for Kellen Walker. Today on the show, Hyundai invests $6 billion in robotics, AI, and hydrogen in South Korea. Subaru and Mazda post sales declines for the 7th straight month, and 2 more VW dealers sue to block Scout Motors from selling directly to consumers. Plus, our own Larry Velaquette lays out the clues pointing to Toyota possibly building a 6th U.S. assembly plant.
They just don't have that much left in their North American plants that they can utilize if they want to do a new product.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Hyundai Motor Group is investing $6 billion in a new robotics, AI, and hydrogen production complex in South Korea. The site will produce 30,000 robots annually, matching the capacity of Hyundai's planned Georgia robotics plant. This includes commercializing its mobile eccentric droid, a 4-wheeled autonomous logistics wagon. The complex will also feature an AI data center and a solar-powered hydrogen facility producing 28,000 tons yearly. More February sales results are in since we last spoke. Subaru saw sales drop more than 8%, hurt by winter weather in key markets. That's the 7th straight month of declines for the automaker, despite the Forester hitting a February record. And Mazda sales slipped slightly for the 7th consecutive month as well, though the company says it was still its second best February ever. And 2 more Volkswagen dealers are suing to block Scout Motors from selling directly to consumers. Volkswagen of West Islip in New York and Curran Volkswagen in Connecticut filed the lawsuit Monday in federal court in Virginia seeking class action status. The dealers say VW Group of America is breaching franchise agreements through its ownership of Scout, which began taking reservations in October 2024. Joining me now to talk more about it is our own Jack Walsworth, who covers Volkswagen Group and all of its brands and subsidiaries for us at Automotive News. Jack, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Hi, Jake. Good to be here.
All right, so let's start with what the full picture sort of looks like in terms of dealership lawsuits against Scout at this point, and how this development changes anything, if at all. What would you say? Is this a big development?
Potentially, I would say. So, the fact that another lawsuit has landed, that's not necessarily like a surprise. I mean, I think we were expecting additional lawsuits, just given that we are a country of 50 states, or Volkswagen Group dealers all over the country. I think there's always going to be multiple lawsuits, but this one is a little bit different in that it's seeking class action status. That's something it can take some time. I talked with one of the lawyers on the lawsuit yesterday, Len Bolivia. He said it could take up to a year. So, if this lawsuit progresses, if it reaches a point where it is certified as a class action, that would be a big development. But whether that happens or when that happens, is to be determined. At the same time, it is, I think, noteworthy that, 2 Volkswagen dealerships, they're both on the East Coast, have come out and, they're reps on this lawsuit. So the fact that, more dealers are putting their name out there or going through the legwork of filing a lawsuit is interesting. I mean, not every Volkswagen dealer in the country is going to file an individual lawsuit, I don't think. But the fact that we're seeing a couple more is interesting, and that's kind of a development. But again, I think we were expecting more lawsuits, and to be honest, I would expect more to land going forward. I think this lawsuit is pretty similar to the other ones that we've seen in other states, and similar in the arguments, I should say. Dealers and dealer associations continue to say that Scout is solely funded by Volkswagen Group. Essentially, the Scout is no different than any other Volkswagen Group brand. They should be using franchise dealers. I think dealers continue to say, yes, we have seen some of their brands like Tesla, Rivian, Lucid set up their own direct-to-consumer network, but they always point out that none of those brands have, a legacy automaker behind them. So, this lawsuit has kind of similar arguments, points out that Scout has a lot of Volkswagen Group or Volkswagen Group of America employees running things. So again, similar but slightly different on this one for sure.
Really interesting detail in your article about this. You mentioned that VW dealers have been trying to meet directly with executives about Scout, but they keep getting rebuffed. What are you hearing from dealers about their strategy if these legal challenges don't work? Are they preparing for Scout to launch anyway, no matter what?
Yeah, I think it seems, from my conversations, that dealers are kind of preparing for the worst. I think, to be sure, the dealers, dealer associations, NADA have been very clear that they're going to fight this, and they have been fighting it, basically essentially since Scout announced that they would be going direct consumer back in October of 24. But I think dealers are also, pretty realistic. And my conversations, it kind of seems like there's, some dealers are accepting of the fact that this Scout will probably come to market. Vehicles will probably go on sale just because, again, we're a country of 50 states. It seems plausible that one state could potentially, open the door and Scout gets selling. I don't think dealers want that, obviously. And, I'm guessing most dealers are confident in these lawsuits that have been filed and kind of where things stand on the legal side. But again, it's kind of to be determined. One dealer I talked with has said, Scout will get figured out. It'll get sorted out somehow. So, I think it'll be kind of interesting to see how that happens. And, back when Scout was awarded a Colorado dealer license back in December, I talked with the CEO of the Colorado Auto Dealers Association, Matthew Groves, and he had said, there's basically two things we can do. We can appeal this through litigation or see if Scout can swim. Dealers in Colorado did file a lawsuit in January, so they've kind of gone the litigation route. But at the same time, I think his comment about seeing if Scout can swim is probably a mindset that a Volkswagen dealer might have. Obviously, Volkswagen dealers want these products, but I'm sure they have some questions on how the products will actually be accepted by consumers. To roll out, launching a new brand is not easy. It's not like a quick endeavor. So I think there's a little bit of skepticism, but at the same time, I know every Volkswagen dealer would like to be able to sell these cars at some point.
It's a fascinating story. Jack Walsworth is on it for us at Automotive News. Jack, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Yep, anytime. Thanks, Jake.
Coming up, our own Larry Velaquette talks about the clues pointing to Toyota potentially building a 6th U.S. plant. That's next on Daily Drive. Are you a dealer creating a workplace culture your employees are proud to be part of? Applications are now open for the 2026 Automotive News Best Dealerships to Work For program. This isn't just an award, it's a chance to get real insight into what's working at your dealership and where you can improve. And we've expanded the categories this year, recognizing everything from technician experience and leadership development to AI enablement and employee retention. The registration deadline is April 17th. Find out more and apply at autonews.com.
Hey, quick question. What if nearly 1 in 3 customers who walked onto your lot were ready to buy before they ever got there? That's not a hypothetical. That's actually happening right now. Almost 1 in 3 consumers say they want to complete their car purchase completely online. The question is your dealership able to close that deal online, or are you handing it off to someone who is? That's where AutoTrader's Accelerate My Deal Elite online checkout comes in. Accelerate My Deal Elite isn't just another digital retailing tool that takes the dealer out of the equation. It's built with you in mind. You stay in control of the deal. Pricing, terms, the whole thing. While your customers do the heavy lifting up front from the comfort of their home. We're talking real online checkout, built-in ID and insurance verification, and a seamless experience that fits right into the way your team already works. No ripping out your process, no retraining your whole staff, just more deals done faster. And here's the thing, your competitors aren't sitting on this. The dealers who move first are the ones capturing those online buyers. Don't let that be someone else's win. Reach out to your AutoTrader rep today and ask about Accelerate My Deal Elite, or visit dealdoers.com to learn more. Your customers are ready. The question is, are you?
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Jake Neer. Toyota is maxed out. The automaker is running its plants at over 90% efficiency globally, with no unused production space anywhere in the world. But demand keeps growing, especially in the U.S. Our own Larry Velaquette has found several clues that point to Toyota potentially building a sixth U.S. assembly plant, and he has a new column about it on autonews.com. Larry, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Jake, always great to be here.
This is a really great column, and I love that you're playing sort of detective here, Larry. You lay out several clues that point to Toyota potentially building a sixth U.S. plant. What are the biggest indicators that made you start kind of connecting those dots?
Knowing this company as we do, they are maxed out globally, right? They don't have any unused production space anywhere in the world. They are already the world's largest automaker in terms of volume. And in the U.S., on the sales call back in January, the executives started repeatedly talking about how they can't get any more. They've got the plants already running at, near peak efficiency levels. The only place that they were getting extra vehicles to meet local demand was, they're getting basically onesies, twosies, right? From China and Europe, where things are slower because of competition from Chinese automakers. So they were getting some redirected volume. But that may not last. They have some unmet needs. I mean, I've been covering these guys for almost 8 years now, working up to a decade, right, of covering Toyota and knowing their limitations and hearing these executives talk about, we're running super efficiently. We're not putting any incentives on, yet we're still selling everything. Our dealers are extremely happy because they're turning everything over on their lots every month. They're living in the promised land and they want to grow, and there's room for them to grow in demand, but not in supply.
Well, there's also literal room for them to grow possibly. Here you identify that one of their plants that they've recently built in North Carolina, it's only using about half of the land that they bought. Walk us through why that location makes sense in your mind and kind of what infrastructure might already be in place there.
Yeah. So when they bought the land for the battery complex, which was their largest single investment in North America, it's almost $14 billion. It was 1,800 acres, and they used about half of it to build their battery complex, which is 7 buildings. And of those 7 buildings, they're only just starting to make the batteries, and they're only using about half of those, right? So they've got a large untapped asset. And if you lay out on a map where Toyota has its production facilities, most of them follow the I-64 corridor, which flows from North Carolina, and it goes past near Georgetown, which is their largest U.S. assembly plant, and then to Princeton, Indiana, which is where the Grand Highlander, and for a short time yet, the Highlander and the Lexus TX are built, as well as the Sienna. And their other facilities, other assembly plants and their engine plants, they all kind of flow not too far from I-64. This is right there. It also has the advantages of having a rail access that they don't currently use, but which would be very helpful when you have an assembly plant, you want to move vehicles. Rail's the best way to do it. So the infrastructure is already in place because they own the land. It's basically the cost of the building.
And by the way, having covered the search for industrial sites here where I am in Michigan, and the lack of sites that are available for this sort of thing, I mean, that's a huge deal.
It really is. And I tell you, when they chose that battery site, we did a big story at that time to talk about how difficult it was. This was about the same time that Ford was doing its Blue Oval project there along the Kentucky-Tennessee border. And these two projects grabbed some of the last large land for industrial projects left. There's just not a lot remaining. And so, it's a untapped asset, or unfully tapped asset at this point.
Let's talk a little bit more about that capacity issue that you mentioned. You write that Toyota is running at over 90% plant efficiency. What does that actually mean for their ability to respond to demand or add new products or things like that?
Well, they're running at 90% efficiency, and they're doing so generally without a lot of overtime, right? So they are running their plants at capacity. They're very conscious not to do what, say, some of the Detroit 3 do, which is if they have extra demand, they move heaven and earth to capitalize on that. That means their workers, work all kinds of overtime. They add weekends. I know, down near where I live, the Jeep Wrangler plant, when Wrangler demand was through the roof, they got that plant up well over 100% capacity simply by running all these extra weekend shifts and ignoring maintenance issues that they really shouldn't, just to grab those extra sales. Toyota tries not to do that. They're cognizant not to do that very much. So for them, 90% is pretty darn good, right? They obviously run the Toyota production system, so they're always working on efficiency. They're always Kaizening things to squeeze extra capacity out, but they're running up against the functional limits of that. And in all of their plants, right? They just don't have that much left in their North American plants that they can utilize if they want to do a new product, like the one we're going to talk about in a second.
You read my mind, Larry. It does really sound like dealers want a compact pickup, something to compete with the Ford Maverick. I was going to say the Hyundai Santa Cruz, but RIP to that one. But how big a factor is that in potentially driving a decision for a new plant for Toyota?
Well, okay. So to understand this, you have to understand that Toyota's vehicles are built on platforms, right? And so if you want to build a plant to do a compact pickup, and let's forget for a moment how Toyota historically used to dominate compact pickups, right? That's what the Tacoma was before it grew, and what the original, T100, if you go back, what that was. Small pickups is where they made their, bread and butter years ago. And they've kind of seeded that, as the market all moved larger and everybody gave it up. And then Ford went back and said, you know what, there's volume here. And as a Maverick driver, I can attest that they're functionally, great vehicles, those size, for if you don't need a full-size pickup or you would like something that fits in your garage. So they think that there's a natural audience for this vehicle for them. They've been studying it now for, 7-8 years, trying to figure out what they're going to do. They originally looked at a Corolla-based one that they have a version of in Brazil, but they decided that that was probably too small for the U.S. market. Now they're looking at something that would be RAV4 sized, based off the RAV4. So basically a RAV4 with a bed. And what that does from a production standpoint, because of this platform strategy, you can build a compact pickup and you don't have to fill up that whole plant with that compact pickup. You can also build RAV4s, right? If you want, you could add RAV4 volume or move the RAV4 plug-in hybrid from Japan to the US. The thing about Toyota is that underneath their strategy has been now for several decades, build it where they sell it, right? So if they're selling, 2.5 million vehicles in the US, they want to make as many of them here as they possibly can because that's added efficiency, that's cheaper for everybody involved if they can build them locally. They don't have to ship them across the Pacific Ocean. So it's a good strategy. And if they build a pickup, the dealers that I've talked to also want, in addition to a compact pickup, they would also like a small delivery van, which they think if you are already going to build a pickup, you're just talking about a little bit of sheet metal to put a cap on it, right? And now you suddenly have a RAV4 hybrid small delivery van that you can build very cheaply and which you can really do. And I'm talking about something the size of say the Ford Transit Connect, right? Maybe even a little smaller. So last mile vehicle, perfect little delivery vehicle in town. They think there's volume there too.
Now let's talk a little bit about logistics some more. And in this case, finances. You mentioned in your piece that Toyota has committed to $10 billion in U.S. investment through 2030. but they've only really spent about 20% of that so far. A new plant costs usually $2 to $3 billion. So the money's there. What else needs to fall in place to actually make this happen?
Yeah, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Pretty soon it's real money, right? So they have committed to $10 billion. They did so last year to spending that. Now, generally, to be fair, automakers constantly commit to these things going forward, and it looks like a big number, but they're constantly spending, $500 million in this plant or $800 billion between these three component plants. So there's, some of these projects are just ongoing, and they happen as we do product changeovers. These investments get made to accommodate changes, and they count.
Looks good on a press release.
Looks good on a press release, but it's kind of, operationally what they do.
Right.
So this would be, if they decide to do this, it could easily fit within their spending plan. And, I see benefits for a lot of different reasons. And you just, I've said this before, this industry has said this for decades. You're never going to go broke betting with Toyota or betting on Toyota, right? They don't do very many dumb things. And so I see this as an opportunity. Now you might question, okay, why not in Mexico? Because of all the free trade agreements. I think, and this is maybe a result of the times, right? Of the sensitivity to building, if they're going to build another plant, it's just as easy to build it in North Carolina, and the costs on an ongoing basis for vehicles that are going to sell is the cost difference is pretty minimal.
Even including the labor costs. I know that labor costs have increased in Mexico significantly, but is that gap so small that it doesn't really make that much of a difference at this point?
So it's not that it doesn't make a difference, right? But you have other concerns in Mexico too, right? You have to get vehicles across the border. You're dealing with look at the unrest down there right now, right? The chances of, North Carolina having unrest like that while still there, probably not as great, right? Probably not as great. So you have some fixed costs, and you have a lot of the costs, the upfront capital costs that you've already done, right? And it's just sitting there in the form of empty land. So the big concern that they are going to have with that location, and they had it with the battery plant, is simply the labor pool. Are they going to be able, and this is everywhere now, are they going to be able to find enough workers within that regional area without driving wages up so much that they, become a negative impact on the region to be able to fill an assembly plant? Well, what I can tell you is that if you look at what we've been writing about robots, assembly plants will have far fewer workers a couple decades from now than they have now.
Before I let you go, what have Toyota executives said to you? I mean, you've pitched me and you've convinced me, Larry, and probably members of our audience. But when you talk to executives from Toyota, what do they say about this?
So they gave me a very top of the board. I don't want to say pablum, right? It wasn't pablum. It was simply, we study this all the time. We have nothing to announce now, right? Which is exactly what you expect them to say when you ask them a question like, are you going to build a plant that you haven't announced? But what you didn't hear was, no, we're not going to do it.
The president did not deny blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. All right. Well, this is fascinating, Larry, and we will be keeping our eyes on whether or not this actually comes to pass. Really appreciate you taking the time, and I will see you soon on our weekend drive edition of the show pretty soon. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. And I want to add too the end of the column, right? Which is, if it doesn't happen, forget you heard anything. But if it does happen, remember you heard it here first.
Yes, absolutely. You heard it here first on Daily Drive. Thanks again, Larry.
Thanks, Jake.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Jake Neer, in for Kellen Walker. Thanks to our own Jack Walsworth, Hans Greimel, and David Phillips for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on Toyota's U.S. manufacturing footprint, lawsuits against Scout Motors' planned direct-to-consumer retail model, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a conversation with Bill Berman, CEO of Pinewood AI, about the company's big plans in North America after a successful launch at NADA.
We had a huge influx of customers, way exceeding, our expectations out there, and everything was incredibly well received.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you'd never miss an episode.